So President Biden is cracking down on junk fees, also known as hidden fees. So happy to hear it. I am so here for that. But those fees keep the ultra wealthy, which is why they were created in the first place. Really a penalty for being poor. So Jordan, you wrote an article at the Lever, and thank you for breaking this down. Can you share a little bit about that, and then we'll put up some graphics to comment on.
Of course, yeah, I wrote about this for the Lever and my Substack, and this is something I've been covering for a couple months now because banks over the past 10 years or so have taken in well over $400 billion in overdraft fees, adjusting for inflation. They make around 30 billion right now a year because some banks have reined in overdraft fees in advance of potential regulation. And if people aren't familiar, it's when you write a check or you run your debit card and you don't have a sufficient balance, but the bank allows that transaction to happen. So you owe whatever the remainder is, plus a fee. And sometimes that fee gets additional charges every day you don't restore your balance in your bank account, your checking account, or whatever. And that begins to accumulate. And when compared to a payday loan, which so many people see as predatory and scammy because of high interest rates, this actually has a higher interest rate, sometimes up to 17,000%. So that's not a sustainable system. Republicans have tried to frame this as some innovative, flexible product for short-term lending, when really they know this is how banks profiteer. Thousands and thousands of banks, like 90-some% of banks and around 60% of credit unions have overdraft programs. And they frame that as some innovative product, but ultimately it's so they can take money away from people. And a very small percent of people, and these are the working poor, end up paying around 90-some% of overdraft revenue every year. So it's not just everybody's doing it. It is people who are really struggling to make ends meet are providing the lion's share of this 30 billion or so in annual revenue off of overdraft fees. You're charging people who don't have money more money. And it's totally grotesque. So the Biden administration is now saying, we're going to tackle this. This is a problem. This is something that shouldn't exist. So we're going to crack down on this. And the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, which I think is great and Republicans hate because it puts the interests of working people and consumers at the forefront finally. And they put out, they've issued directives, they've put out guidance, and all these different things that they plan to do. And the entirety of the Senate Banking Committee sent a letter to the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau taking issue with this, saying, you don't understand what you're talking about. You're smearing these banks. You're smearing overdraft fees by calling them junk fees. So I decided I'm going to look up and see how much the banking industry and the financial sector has donated to the Senate Banking Committee members. Millions just in this cycle. They have received millions from the banks just this election cycle. And I think the 4 Senate Republicans who are up for re-election this year have received over half of that. They're not putting the interests of the consumers and bank customers at the forefront. They're doing the interests of the banks, and they're putting banks first. And that comes at a disservice to all of us.
Well, it's par for the course in Congress. The donors get to control the policies. And I want our viewers to understand that overdraft fees, let's take that junk fee, for example, has not always existed in this country. It came into existence in 1990. So we didn't have it before then, which means we can live without it. It really is a penalty on the poor. And Jordan, your excellent article laying out what exactly it is, what is happening, and that we, just as much as we don't like predatory lending that is coming from other financial avenues, we should not like it here just because it is a bank versus another type of financial institution. It is just as wrong. And as you have clearly laid out for us, the banks are charging much more than these other entities. So we want to put up what the president put out in a tweet. President Biden, we're cracking down on hidden junk fees like surprise overdraft and deposit fees, credit card late fees, hidden hotel booking fees. Amen to that, Mr. President. Even those termination charges that stop you from switching cable and internet plans to get a better deal, they add up. We're taking action. And that is, I mean, that is absolutely true, George. These fees do add up and they do have a disproportionate negative impact on people who are already struggling every single day. It is very regressive, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It disproportionately affects the working poor. And one other thing I want to point out is just to show the role of money in politics time and time again. That's where these conversations end up. It's not just the banks donating to these Senate Republicans. It is also the Chamber of Commerce, which represents business interests. They have spent tens of millions of dollars already this year lobbying on a ton of financial issues, but specifically on overdraft fees. And they are lobbying Republicans and some Democrats in Congress hard because there is also a bill in the House that Carolyn Maloney introduced that would also rein in overdraft fees. So, some Democrats are trying to do something about it, and they're being met with this onslaught of lobbying and an army of lobbyists and millions in campaign donations to people who should be regulating the banks in Congress. So it disproportionately affects the working poor. And it also underscores the role of money in politics and how we really are going to struggle to do anything until we get big money out of politics.
Yeah, always follow the money. And whether it's corporate Dems or corporate Republicans, the corporate takeover, the corporate states of America, that is real. I want to put up something that came from the Republican members of the Senate Banking Committee. Jordan, you had mentioned them, but they sent a letter to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which said the CFPB has launched a relentless smear campaign against the banks that offer optional, that's laughable, optional overdraft services to their customers. Charging fees that customers chose to pay should not be disturbing or illegal. Jordan, I mean, I just gotta let you break in right there. That is a bold-faced lie. Who would choose? What consumer in their right minds would choose to pay those overdraft fees? That is not true.
Right, it's also in how it's framed. Right? They spin these things to their customers as an additional free service. Hey, we'll protect you. It's overdraft protection is how it's always framed. So you don't go over. Cover the transaction so you don't get it declined. And then they leave out in the fine print that, we're gonna slap you with around a $30 median fee and fees every day you don't get that money back into your account. And it's all about spin. That's why they're taking issue with the term junk fees, because they really want to spin this as some flexible, convenient service a bank provides, and that's not true. It offers a more expensive median fee per use than a payday loan. Yeah, and I can't stress that enough. And I think we all agree, payday loans are not a healthy, safe financial product. It is predatory. They charge you high interest rates, but this is even worse. But it's ultimately about how it's spun.
Yeah, and one of the things I remember, on the Sanders campaign, one of our ideas, one of the things that the senator wanted to push is that we use the Postal Service, which Republicans are trying to destroy. Use the Postal Service in place of, so that people that don't have as much could use that as a banking avenue. The United States Postal Service. Why not? Why not utilize them in that way? But Republicans and corporatist Democrats, this is a bipartisan effort. We want folks to know, because there are in fact people from both parties that benefit from allowing these banks to get away with this. So it is refreshing to see the White House stepping in, saying enough is enough, and we are going to do something about it. The Republicans went on in that letter, Jordan. I mean, the whole thing is laughable, pointing out that somehow there's a disdain for banks. No, the disdain is about the practices. The disdain is about how they are treating, or mistreating is probably a better characterization, mistreating their customer base, especially the customer base that can least afford it. It makes no sense. Jordan, so glad that you did this story. And I hope that folks will continue to, support what the White House is doing in this effort, and we continue to push for more policy changes. And just one other point about this, Jordan, it really shows that public policy can be changed, that what is true today does not have to be true tomorrow, that this stuff does not have to be there forever. If we see a problem in society, we should seek to fix that problem, to right that wrong.